don't have any
Did you
internet.
fix the Wi-Fi?
We're looking at it. It's a Nex-Tech problem.
Oh, but that went off.
That was low.
I've had
fees from the developer of the Hilton Garden Inn property. Miscellaneous percent in August. That translates into month-to-date total water revenue being down 7.69% and conservation revenue down 49%. Year-to-date, residential and business consumption is flat, with total water and conservation revenue up 5.6%. Expenditures in August totaled $6 million, which is an increase of $2.5 million. Some notable areas of increased expenditures. Part of the large increase in expenditures noted above is due to the fact that there were 3 payrolls in August. That pushes salaries and benefits up over $400,000 for the month. The other large portion of the increase noted was for the transfer of funds into capital projects for the 43rd and 45th Street project in the amount of $879,861. The library's allocation was dispersed this month, the amount of $696,000, increasing those expenditures due to timing. This occurred in September of last year. Solid waste reserves expenditures increased $16,000 for the purchase of replacement polycarts, and water reserve expenditures rose $198,000 due mainly to the work being done on the 2 water towers. Some areas of decreased expenditure. Parks improvement projects were down $46,900 due to the purchase of the UP Plaza Park restroom at this time last year, and Bickel-Schmidt Sports Complex other contractuals fell $64,000 as they were putting down a road-based prep a year ago. Month-to-date, general fund sales tax collections were at $608,095, which is an increase of $30,238, or 5.2% as compared to last year. Year-to-date, general fund collections are at $4,741,31. That's up $36,653, or just 0.78%. The reported quarter-to-date sales tax collections by industry classification was up $42,251, or 2.26%. Finally, the portfolio certificates of deposit on August 31, 2018 totaled $48.45 million with a weighted average interest rate of 1.86. That's up 0.83 from a year ago. Par value on the portfolio of Treasury notes is still at $7.707 million with a weighted average yield to maturity of 1.78. The total balance of the money market account on August 31 was $1.5 million with a current yield of 0.5, and total investments are down $2.743 million when compared to this time last year, due in large part to the ongoing reconstruction expenditures at the wastewater facility. We will be taking a draw on the revolving loan for reimbursement of those in September.
I move we approve the financial statement as presented.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Schwaller, seconded by Commissioner Musil. All those in, well, any questions or discussion? None. Any of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Next is citizen comments. I think this is the portion of the meeting where we make the nursing student get up and say something. No? Oh. Okay.
We're glad you're here.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's okay. You're welcome.
Sitting there being quiet.
Thanks for coming.
Next item is the consent agenda. We have a motion for that.
Move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Swaller, seconded by Commissioner Jacobs. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Next, we're going to have a update on the R9 water project.
Toby Doherty, City Manager. I wanted to take the opportunity of the meeting tonight to provide a short update on where we're at in the R9 process. Most of you attended a public meeting in Greensburg on June 21st. And I'm going to go through these documents in order, so you can do what you want. But and the meeting was pretty straightforward. It was a public meeting that the chief engineer held as part of the process. The change order was posted for public consumption. The meeting was to take public comment on the proposed order. The only thing that was, I guess, noteworthy of the public meeting is a group called WaterPack, which is a local to the area with the R9 and its advocacy group. They had hired a group, engineering group called Keller and Associates, to provide a report that they talked about during public comment. Essentially, the Keller report had two components, and you guys are familiar with this document. The first component suggested that water use is declining in and around the R9 area, despite the fact that we've been converting it back to native grass. The second part of the report suggested a site-specific consumptive use calculation for the R9, as opposed to the way DWR typically handles consumptive use calculations. And I want to take a little bit of a deviation on consumptive use. DWR's consumptive use calculations are very formulaic. If you have 1,000 acre-foot of water and you are in a certain county and you are converting that from irrigation to stock watering or municipal or something, the consumptive use calculation is done by formula. In the statute that deals with consumptive use calculations, I'm sorry, the regulation that deals with consumptive use calculations, and it's Kansas Regulation 559C, there is a section at the end that discusses if the method set forth in subsection A produce an annual authorized quantity of water which appears to be unrealistic and could result in impairment of other water rights, then you can use a site-specific consumptive use. What you could say is, we're going to get very granular in the level of detail for consumptive use, not just use our specific formula. So as we were working with DWR to draft this master order, we talked about, is this going to impair anybody? And the answer was no. And is the consumptive use number realistic? And the answer was yes, it's realistic. So therefore, the regulation didn't apply. So what the Keller report said was, we think that you should interpret the statute, and if you interpret the statute, here's our consumptive use calculations, and that yields 4,000 acre feet of water compared to your 4,800 acre feet of water. Keller failed to provide any data to support this conclusion, which we pointed out. And WaterPack actually had the report for 18 months, and so if they wanted to submit it as part of our consumptive use development, they could have. They chose to sit on it until the meeting. So the first document that you have in your stack is an August 6th document that is our response to the Keller report after the public meeting. And we pointed out several errors in the report. We pointed out the lack of scientific data to back up the conclusion. We reminded the chief engineer that Keller is suggesting a new set of rules for Hayes and Russell that everybody else is not following. And we pointed out that water levels weren't declining. Keller tried to make a claim that water levels were declining. They picked a couple of very specific locations in a very specific time period to make this conclusion, but yet when you look at the water level trends around the entire area, it's not declining. As a side note, we have pulled all of the water use reports in the area of the R9 ranch. So when you have an irrigation right, you have to file a water use report every year on how much you used. And then you can pull that data off of the state's website, how much water was used versus what the authorized quantity is to use. And we've heard this mantra from a few people in the area of R9 that water levels are declining and it's not sustainable, but yet water use isn't down. So the water use has been very consistent year to year. We don't see any decline in trends, but if people were that concerned about water levels going down, then one would think they would curtail their usage, but that hasn't happened. So the report you have, the first report is our response to that. On August 9th and August 27th, the Groundwater Management District number 5 held board meetings. And Groundwater Management District has a regulatory role in the process. They have a voice in the process. So the chief engineer submits the change order to them, and they can provide comment on it. So the master order was discussed at their August 9th board meeting, and they decided to hold a special board meeting on August 25th to provide their comment. During these meetings, the board is presented with a report from Blue Groundwater. So Blue is the one that developed the overall groundwater model that we and DWR then utilized to run further refined models to determine what the 4,800 acre feet sustainable water right was, or water yield was. So Blue had evaluated the Burns and Mack report. Blue did point out there was an oversight in the future runs component of the modeling report. So what Burns and Mack did is they developed a model that ran a 17-year period with the best known data. And then once they had that model done, they ran future runs off of that model with droughts and inserted to look at what the overall sustainable yield was. When they ran the future droughts, rather than setting the cells along the Arkansas River to zero to account for no flow in the river, they were just turned off. And that was an oversight by Burns and Mack. It was pointed out by Blue. We pointed out that, yes, it was an oversight, but if the cells were set to zero rather than turned off, it would probably result in a benefit to the city. It's not a way to devalue the model. It just was an oversight, but it would benefit the cities, not the overall number. Blue essentially also stated they would have run the model differently. Well, that's fine, but we didn't hire Blue. We hired Burns and Mack, and they work with DWR to run this model. So GMD5 used the Keller report and the Blue as a basis for their recommendation. And if you look at GMD5's recommendation, which is what you have as your second document, they stipulate that all of the regulatory requirements are met and followed in this. However, they do weigh in on the 4,800 acre feet, and they say that 4,000 is their number that they would recommend. And they also acknowledge that the chief engineer is not required to do a site-specific consumptive use calculation. That'll be important for the next document. So then the next document you have is dated September 14th. This is our response to the GMD5's comments. The chief engineer allowed us to provide, and this is all part of the record is why I'm showing you. This has all been submitted to the record. So we responded to the GMD5 recommendation as well as the Blue report because we hadn't been formally introduced that until we received it as part of the GMD5 proceedings. With regard to GMD, we point out that the 4,800 feet limitation is a deal between DWR and the cities of Hayes and Russell. It's outside of the normal realm of statutes and regulations. It's a deal between DWR and Hayes and Russell, and it's really none of the GMD's business. It's not part of their regulatory oversight, and they have no regulatory voice in the 4,800 acre feet. With regard to Baloo, Burns and Mack acknowledges that there was an oversight of setting the cell data off rather than setting it to 0. However, they point out it would likely be in our favor. And as far as the rest of the criticism, Burns and Mack said that that's fine, they would have done it differently, but they didn't run the model. And Burns and Mack, and we reminded the chief engineer that we worked very closely with DWR in developing this model and running this model. And I'm not just talking the administrative staff at DWR, I'm talking about their modeling people. I mean, we worked very much hand in hand with them to make sure that we were taking everything, and we ran the runs DWR wanted to run to determine long-term sustainability. So then if you look at the next document, this is September 14th, GMD5 submitted another letter revising their original comments, saying they do want the chief engineer to conduct a site-specific consumptive use calculation. This sort of contradicts their previous letter where they say that they acknowledge chief engineer doesn't have to. So we responded to that on September 18th. We reminded the chief engineer of the regulations. We point out that the GMD makes this request without any credible evidence or scientific data to back it up, and or any statutory or legal language to back it up. And then we remind the chief engineer that we're following all statutes and regulations on the matter. So then later on the day on September 18th, the chief engineer sends an email out that says, with this I consider the record complete and closed. And so the record is closed, so no more information is coming into the record. And the chief engineer then hopes to have the master order issued, the master order completed sometime in October of this year, and then we can start with the transfer process. And then as an aside, and I do have another document for you I will hand out, Burns and Mack did update the modeling report, and Burns and Mack did this at their cost. We didn't pay for this because it was their oversight to start with. They updated the modeling report, and it was in our favor. So just for the record, it is in our favor. It's slight. I mean, and they said it would be slight. It would be a slight change, but it would be most likely in the city's favor. So it was in the city's favor. So that part is corrected. And with that, right now, we're waiting for the chief engineer to take the draft off the master order and make it contingently approved, and then we can start the transfer process. I would entertain any questions if you have them. I apologize for getting in the weeds. It's a very complex matter with a flurry of communication right at the end.
I appreciate you bringing it forward. I think you do a good job explaining it. And if I'm understanding it, these guys have been around longer than I have.
Have you had any I don't want to say off the record, but have you had any verbal conversations with DWR as to their reaction and from GMD3 and their recommendations?
No, nothing.
Well, I appreciate you presenting it and explaining it. Sounds like some folks are trying to get off the reservation here, so the record's closed. Hopefully we'll have some better news mid-month.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Toby.
Thanks, Toby. Next up, regress report. Progress report. Sorry about that.
I look forward to it, Jacob.
I do too, Jacob.
Mayor and Commissioners, I'm Jacob Wood, Assistant City Manager, and I will be doing this month's progress report. I was gonna just pull up some regulations and give it to you, but I figured you guys had enough of that just now. I am gonna try to be faster than the financial report, so we'll see if I can do that.
Hold on for you, Butch.
Everybody got it.
So I'm going to start out with IT. You may be able to hear, and you've seen some people running around here tonight. We did update the audio system in this room. It's
sparkling.
about 20 years old, all
I
the
like
mixing equipment, and it was 20 years old, but it was also not top of the line 20 years old. It was like gas station 20 years old stuff. So all the speakers and everything is updated, so we have the ability now to adjust things on the fly. So if one of the commissioners gets too loud, I can turn them down. So that's pretty cool.
Sorry, I apologize in advance.
So I'm assuming the audience can hear us a lot better out there?
It's been a common complaint, yeah.
Yeah.
In the water department, I just want to highlight the turf conversion program. I know that the season is ending. part of the turf conversion program requires that you have a pre-inspection done on your property. You can still get that done now, and that lasts for about a year. So they keep those open. This is just a couple of before and after pictures of some turf that was converted earlier this year. In the water department, we finally finished the sandblasting repainting program for our water towers. You may have realized during the last couple of months we had some water main breaks and some pressure issues. Everything is back online and should be equalized, so we've actually reduced the number since we've had 50 leaks year to date so far, which is a pretty significant increase from the last couple of years. But the last one that we had was on September 3rd, so we're almost a month, and I probably just jinxed us.
Probably did.
We're almost a month without a water leak. You may have seen we've got a lot of holes around town that we're fixing, where we've been fixing those water leaks. Because we had so many at one time, it was hard to get to them all at one time. But they are all fixed as of now. That's also something that the Public Works Department has a pretty big hand in. So they've been helping out. This is just a couple of pictures of the places where we've repaired those holes. You may have noticed on West 27th Street that we completed an overlay on that street last week. And they actually chip sealed that over the top of the asphalt today. In the fire department, we are starting to see some progress at the Regional Fire Rescue Training Facility. The concrete pad has been poured. We're in the middle of design and construction on the tower, which should be done in the next probably 4 or 5 months. And so there's additional effort going on out at that site. We had 4 or 5 firefighters participate in the 9/11 Memorial Stair Climb. They went to Wichita, met with other firefighters. They climbed 110 flights of stairs in memory of the firefighters that were killed on 9/11 at the World Trade Center attack. In project management on Allen Street, that project began in March. It's about a $2.5 million project. You can see on the map here where we're at in green has been completed. They're working between 13th and 15th Street right now. The project is ahead of schedule. We expect it to be completed 2 or 3 weeks before the November 16th deadline. This is a picture of the intersection at 14th Street and then some on 15th Street. Another project that we just started, curb and brick repair on 17th Street from Main to Elm is under construction right now. You can see they're working on the curb and gutter. They'll be pulling out some of that brick and replacing it. It's about a $667,000 project, and it should be completed by the end of the year. The Parks Department, we've had a pretty busy month at Frontier Park. We had the Flying Bison Open Annual Disc Golf Tournament, which had 149 entries, which is the most that they've ever had. And then we also had Thunder on the Bricks with 193 entries. So our parks crews were very involved at getting those things set up and then cleaned up after the fact. We had some improvements at Hickok Park. Kiwanis Club has helped to enhance the play area there. They donated some money to put in a spinner and a couple of springs, and the Parks Department crews installed those. The police department has been out and about in the community quite a bit with the start of school at Fort Hays. So they went to the Fort Hays State Wellness Fair. They had the Fatal Vision goggles. They call them fatal. I always call them beer goggles, but
Yeah.
Fatal Vision goggles. I don't know. They were also involved with the March to Maine. They had a booth there where they handed out ice cream, and they had their Fatal Vision goggles out there as well. March to Maine was an event that the CVB was very involved with. They helped with the planning and getting everything in order there. So I just wanted to recognize CVB for the work that they did on that event. And then the last thing on my list, I just want to remind everybody that Oktoberfest is right around the corner. So that is all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Anybody know how to tap a keg?
Yep.
Because I'm
Yeah.
supposed to do
You're
that
gonna do
tomorrow,
that
and I
tomorrow.
don't. I've never
Just-
done it before in my
Just
life.
say a few nice words, and they'll do it for
Oh,
you.
They'll do it for you.
very good.
Be kind
Yes.
and do
Sure
realize
you
it
know
is
how to
early in the
tap a
morning, so pace yourself.
That's real good beer too. Hey, Jacob, I do have a question. I noticed on A Street in front of Coors, they were replacing some of the bricks that was replaced when we redid A Street. Do you know why they were replacing those already?
I'm not sure about that
Might be a water leak.
project.
Might have been a
Yeah,
water leak.
it
It's
could
just
be.
like a real small area, but I was just
If it's a
wondering.
really small area, it's probably just a water
You
leak.
think so? Okay. I just thought, man,
All
we
that
just.
beer and there's a water leak.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jacob. Commissioner Millick, you have anything to share tonight?
I just want to welcome everybody to Oktoberfest as well as Forte's homecoming. Encourage everybody to be safe and sane at both Oktoberfest and homecoming, and encourage everybody to come watch the Tigers Saturday night. They play Central Oklahoma. We have a very good football team again this year, so come out and cheer the Tigers on.
I just want to welcome all the artists that are in town this weekend, art graduates of the university. This year, they had an art reunion for the arts department. We happen to have family that's here celebrating with it, and they've got all kinds of activities going on related directly to the arts. So I'm glad they're all in town as well.
I'm going to echo Commissioner Millick. Got a lot of people who have graduated from Fort Hays coming back that come here every year, and it should be a great weekend to celebrate Hays. So welcome back.
All right. I don't think that I really have anything to add. You've all hit everything that you needed to hit.
Tap it well.
Tap tomorrow at
11.
11.
Oh, they moved it.
They moved it, yes. Tapping is tomorrow at 11, so. All right, with that.
Maybe I'll come down and watch it.